this may be a troll. Who knows? Because the thing says, what are your strongest arguments against God? I converted to Islam about 2 years ago after briefly being agnostic or atheist. We'll see how this call goes. Yeah. Abraham, you are on with Forrest and Graham. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Never had a bad day.
Are you, Ibrahim, are you familiar with things like the Loch Ness Monster and Santa Claus?
Yes, I am.
What are your best arguments against their existence?
That's a good question. Yeah, I haven't thought about that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Probably because I have not seen proof for it, I would say.
Would you say that if I told you that we should start passing laws in this government based on what Santa Claus wants us to do, and that it would favor certain people over others who didn't believe in Santa Claus, would you say that the burden of justifying those laws would be on me? That I should have to prove why people should believe that there's a Santa Claus before we start passing laws that enact his will?
Well, that's a good point. And first of all, I believe religion and government should be kept separate. Religion should not be pushed onto people.
I appreciate that. And I didn't mean to imply that you would. I was just sort of taking the most extreme example to say, okay, I'm so confident in my Santa Clausianness that I'm going to start enacting his will. Would you say that the burden should be on me to actually prove, or at least provide very convincing evidence that Santa Claus is real?
Well, yeah, I get your point there, and I do agree with you, but I was just wondering.
Okay, so before you skip past it, so that's a yes.
Yeah,
I should prove that before people agree with me and start passing those laws or enacting rules based on Santa Claus will. I just want to make sure, because you went past it real quickly. Yes, you agree with that. Is that correct?
Yes, I agree. I do agree with that. If someone does make a claim, they should bring proof for it. Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
So that's my response to your question. Like, I am not in the position to say I have an argument against God for multiple reasons. First, I think the burden of proof is on the person making the positive claim. The person saying that there's a Santa Claus and therefore blah, blah, blah should prove there's a Santa Claus. The person who says there's a God and therefore blah, blah, blah should prove that there's a God. But also, I think that when you get into the business of arguing about God or not, you can run into different versions of God. So when I take calls, I don't even know which God you're talking about when you say, what's your strongest argument against God? We just had a caller who said God was us manifesting reality. We had another one who said I forget if it was a contingent reality or whatever of the substrate. Like, everybody uses God differently. So that's another reason that I don't think it's appropriate to say you need to argue against God when in reality, the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. So does that make sense to you? Do you understand my position? Not that necessarily that you agree with it?
Yeah, I fully understand. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So I don't know if Forrest has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I would say, like, I would parrot the same thing. You have to prove this God exists, but also, like, I think it's important to point out that, like, if this God does exist, what kind of God is it? You know what I mean? And like, I'm an anti-theist, not just an atheist. So I think that religion is actually harmful, and that the gods on offer are all either worthless, or in the case of the Abrahamic God, the God of the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that God is worse than worthless. It is actually an asshole, so I'm not, like, even if you could prove to me that your God is real, you didn't ask arguments against God's existence, you said arguments against God. Even if that God is real, I would never worship it. I would never want anything to do with it. I would be on this exact same show saying, yes, this God is real, fuck that guy. And I wouldn't want anything to do with a God like the one that's described in Islam.
Okay, and why do you believe that view about the Abrahamic God?
So many reasons. So if the Bible or the Quran, if the stories told in these things, I'm way more versed in the Bible than I am the Quran, because I live in Oklahoma.
Same
but
here.
Like, if half of the things that this God is supposed to have done and said and believed in the Bible are true, he's a monster. drowning the whole world in a flood because some people misbehaved and didn't love him enough and worship him enough, demanding worship in the first place, coming up with a concept of hell and sending people to burn for eternity because they weren't stroking his ego the right way. Plus, like if you're talking about, you know, the people passing on this message, like the Bible and the Quran are largely the same story. One just has a magic carpenter from Bethlehem. The other one has a magic pedophile from Mecca. And so like the things that the Quran takes and runs with kind of suck in a new and exciting and exceptional way. And even if we were to say this God is omnipotent and omnibenevolent and all these things, the world that this God created and ran and is currently keeping up with is atrocious. The amount of evil and suffering that this God allows to happen in his name, no less, is completely unjustifiable. So
10,000 children starve to death every day on this planet.
Yeah, so just like it's not really for me to say this God is running such a terrible world, has such a terrible morality, has such a shitty choice of who he picks as a prophet, and is kind of spreading his message. And now I am supposed to fall on my knees and worship this monster, otherwise he'll hurt me. That's not a religion of love, peace, kindness, morality, goodness, nothing. That is a religion of evil and of threats, and it is not something that is worth my or any good person's time.
100%. It's a gaslit spouse that's abused. Yeah. If I mean just what's described in the scriptures. So I'm not sure if is that where you wanted us to go, Ibrahim? Like, one, I don't believe that a God exists because I haven't been presented with sufficient evidence to convince me. And two, if the characters depicted in the scriptures that we are familiar with are true, they are evil celestial dictators.
I would love to hear your response, Ibrahim. We've been talking for a while.
All right, so like I do agree with you that the God of the Bible, or that's been portrayed, is evil, as in a sense, because I don't believe in the Bible. So, and then for your second point,
hold on.
You mentioned that you believe our prophet.
I want to back up. I think you just said I believe that the God of the Bible is evil because I don't believe in the Bible.
Or are you saying you agree?
No,
you agree that that is an awful depiction of God because you don't believe it anyway.
I believe it is an awful depiction of God. Yeah.
Would you believe it was? Would you believe that if that God was real, though?
Well, I would not worship a God that's like that in the Bible. So.
Okay, there you go. All right, we are in agreement. Great. All right, perfect. Yes. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, go on. What were you saying next?
And then for the second part, you believe that our prophet was a pedophile. So why do you believe that? Yeah. And I believe you're going to be talking about Aisha, right?
Yeah, Aisha, who he married at 6 and had sex with at 9.
All right. So first of all, this is about a hadith, correct?
So just out of curiosity, no, hold on. Just out of curiosity because this is the same thing whenever we talk to someone who does believe in the Bible and we're like, hey, the Bible is very clearly pro-slavery. And they start splitting hairs and saying, well, it's different because there's different kinds of slavery and these slaves are different than those slaves. There is no good slavery. So like that's kind of the stand. And so here in this, I don't care where it's written. I don't care what version or whatever. Can we agree, Ibrahim, that a grown man having sex with a 9-year-old girl is a bad thing across the board?
Well, yeah, and I also don't believe this hadith is authentic. So yeah, I agree that
okay.
It's a bad depiction of him.
All right, so that point is irrelevant to you. Let's move on to other ones then.
Sure.
We should, yeah.
So go ahead. What is it that you would like to know with like what have we said that you disagree with?
So we mostly do come into agreement that these are bad depictions of God, bad depictions of people. And then you also mentioned you're an anti-theist. So if there is a person who follows a religion and they don't believe their religion should be pushed on others, they believe it should be kept out of governments, and they believe there shouldn't be religious laws, is that still dangerous for society?
Yes. Would you like me to explain why?
Why do you believe that?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I addressed this in the cold open of the show. When people say, okay, I accept that beliefs inform my actions, and so I'm going to act in accordance with my beliefs. And if my beliefs are wrong, that can harm me or others. I assume you agree with all of that, correct?
Well, yeah, I believe that if I do go to hell, yeah, I will be harmed. So.
Let's not even talk about hell. If my beliefs are wrong or incorrect, I can hurt myself. If I'm a caveman and I think that there's no tiger in the grass and I go walk into the grass, I'm going to get eaten by the tiger, right?
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, you want everything you believe in to be true. You want to believe, to quote a famous person, I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. So that's my starting point. Okay. Now, then I look at saying, okay, if somebody believes something that is not true, that does not comport with reality, there are two observations I make. One, they are risking having their actions informed by a false belief. Therefore, they are risking harming themselves or others. See, for example, we're going to take fluoride out of the water and we're going to have kids lose their teeth. We're going to increase our dental bills, right? So that's the first risk, is might harm yourself. But the more important risk is, why did you accept that belief in the first place if there's insufficient evidence, right? If you accepted the belief based on insufficient evidence, you are training your brain to accept claims on weak evidence, and that leads to you accepting more claims. It's not exactly a slippery slope. It's more of you are conditioning your brain to accept evidence that is bad, or to accept things without any evidence at all. It was either you were indoctrinated into it, your friend sent you a meme, a authority figure told you that this was the truth and you didn't research it. You're training yourself to use flimsy evidence or not to be a critical thinker. That's my main objection there. So those are the two main objections. Does that help you understand where we're coming from? At least for me. I don't know, Forrest, if you have some other points on that one.
No, you pretty much summarized it. It's like that's religion is corrosive not only to individuals but also to the societies that they live in, because they convince people to believe silly things based on bad evidence. And if someone can convince you to believe in absurdities, they can also make you commit atrocities. And so we have all manner of history of people committing violence, genocide, murder, rape, destruction, pillaging, all sorts of things in the name of these made up stories that they believe my God is the most loving God. That's why I'm going to murder everyone in this adjoining town that don't believe in it. And so that's something that for me is something we see played out, especially here in the United States, quite a bit. It's why we are continually having to fight for the rights of LGBT people, for the rights of women, for the rights of the disabled, for the rights of veterans, for the rights of people that are left behind by our society, because we have this ridiculous moral framework that, like, whatever the white evangelical prosperity gospel of the day is saying is the only way we can run our government. So yeah, beliefs inform actions. And when you allow yourself to believe objectively untrue and like immoral things, like that there's a magic guy in the sky that cares about who you have sex with and will burn you for eternity for not sucking his dick properly, then yeah, we're going to have a lot of issues societally and also personally.
Yep. And to give you a point, Ibrahim, the literal question of, is it harmful if somebody holds false, unharmful beliefs? No, it's not harmful by definition. That's just a tautology. The problem is, and this is what I've asked on every call on my shows, this show included, is, do you think that you know what that God wants? That's when I think the real danger sets in. Even if you don't think that laws should be passed to create a theocracy, right? If the minute you go from, I think there's a God that has a mind, and you move into, I think I know the mind of God, or at least part of it, that is throughout history, the moment you start seeing crusades, you start seeing cults, you start seeing terrorism, you start seeing the Dark Ages. It's when people can take that next logical step. Knowing there's a God is the first step, and then humans go, well, I wonder what he wants. And then immediately they start getting answers either from themselves or from people who are tricking them. There's all sorts of reasons that's bad. Does that make sense to you? I'm not saying do you agree with it, but does that at least make sense to you, Ibrahim?
Yes, I do agree that, yeah, this makes sense. And so I do not like to put my religious beliefs on others, and I do not believe it should be enforced or forced on others. And if I am wrong, the only thing I would have missed out on is missing time from praying 5 times a day and not eating pork. That's pretty much it. So,
well, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true, because like, and I get where you're coming from, but like, I think that,
well, it may be true of Ibrahim, if like that's the amount of dedication he has, but for the vast majority of people who share your beliefs, it's not true.
Precisely. Yeah. So like, that's the thing, is like you are, let's say you're a very progressive and reform Muslim who just literally the only thing that you care about is eating pork and praying. And like, that's actually truly the only thing. What about the women and the gay people that live under, you know, this regime, these beliefs? Certainly it's not just, well, I guess I've lost a little bit of time if this isn't true. These people are losing their lives. They're losing their livelihood. They are losing their freedom. They're losing their rights. They're losing their voices. You know, in Afghanistan, women are not even allowed to speak to each other anymore. And so like it's certainly very easy for you as a Muslim here in the United States to say, fuck it. You know, I could pray a little bit or I might not. But at the end of the day, that's all. But for the rest of Islam, including here in the US, especially for people who are not, you know, straight men, there's a lot more at risk that they're already sacrificing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, I don't believe there should be violence due to religion. I don't believe that like LGBTQ or women should be prosecuted.
Do you agree that other people who use the same label for their religion as you, Islam, do you agree that there's millions, if not billions, that do?
Well, yeah, and I don't believe that you should. But
no, I understand. I think you are a wonderful caller. I think you're a very moral person. But I'm just going down sort of. I'm the lawyer, so I'm sort of doing the cross examination here. I'm just asking one question at a time. So yes, you agree that it is true that there's a whole bunch of people that use the same label for their religion, but do believe that it supports violence against women and theocratic governments and all that sort of stuff. So how do you respond to the charge that you, the moderates, are giving the rest of them political cover? That when you answer a survey and you say, I am Islamic, or you are asked about your belief systems on a commercial TV or whatever, you espouse these beliefs and you are normalizing Islam as a whole, which gives cover to the extremists. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I believe that this extremism and people doing violence in the name of Islam, it should be stopped. It should be eradicated. We should use force by any means to stop it. And yeah, I know that because Islam, there's so many different divisions in it. Like I know many of the Sunni countries have a big theocracy and they're very violent. So I mean, yeah. Let me
rephrase it. I'm not sure I worded it correctly. Let me give you an example. Idaho has a law on its books that says if your child dies from medical neglect, you should have given them medicine. You didn't, and they died. Medicine, medical care, whatever. And you refused to do that because of a firmly held religious belief. You are not guilty of murder or manslaughter. Okay, that's Idaho. That people in that state have been trying to change that law for decades. It came about due to, believe it or not, the Nixon administration and Christian scientists, Haldeman and Ehrlichman under Nixon were Christian scientists. It's a long story, but they can't change the law. It's not because people don't want to. It goes to committee. The committee recommends they change the law. It goes out to the floor of their legislature, and it gets voted down every time by people who then go to the cameras and say, this is a horrific thing that's happening in our state, but I don't want to vote against my fellow Christians. I don't want to vote against religious freedom. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about giving cover. It happens in all sorts of different ways. So how do you respond to that?
Well, yeah, I do agree with you there. That law in Idaho should be overturned.
I'm not talking about the specifics. I'm saying you are making the world or your community more vulnerable to that political attitude by saying, I am a Muslim generically.
I do understand that, yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's another one of my complaints. I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay. So I also see that the actions of a group of people or one group of people that share different beliefs should not be placed on Islam as a whole. So, or like Christianity as a whole, because we know there are very progressive Christians and there are very extreme Christians. So
I agree.
You could make the claim that they're, yeah.
Yeah, I have very, very close friends who are evangelical Christians, and we have political events that happen in this country, and they turn to me and they say, I know these are my people. I have no idea what's going on. Like they are still religious, but they also understand that what is happening is very wrong. So I'm not putting any of this on you. I think you're very well spoken and you're putting your position out there well. I'm just saying, when you say, like, to use an example from the South of the United States, like somebody's having a bad day and they're like, man, the devil's really chasing me today. Everybody in the room will take that differently, right? Some people will say, yeah, man, the literal devil is chasing her and trying to make her day bad, and we got to pray for her. Other people will say, oh, that's an expression. It means she's having a bad day. And then there are some people in the room who are like, she's seeing demons and I'm going to fight them because I see them too. Like there's the crazies, right? And because we use the language of religion, it means it gives support to every one of those groups of people. The crazy people here, yeah, I see demons too. And the moderates here, yeah, I'm having a bad day. And other people are like, oh, we need to pray. That happens politically too. So throwing in with a group that is against women in its vast majority, you can't then say, well, I'm not against women. Another way of putting it is, if your political party, I'm not saying your political party is comprised solely of Nazis, but all Nazis are in your political party, right? I'm not saying your religion is all bad, but all the bad people tend to be in the Abrahamic religions. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I see. So first of all, we know that most of these atrocities committed by these quote-unquote Islamic theocracies are in like Sunni countries and maybe the Islamic government of Iran, which first of all, I do condemn the governments of Iran. I don't believe they're a good example. And then also I follow the Twelver Shia branch, which is the less violent. We don't use violence. We don't associate with these violent theocratical fanatics. And we don't—
Do you think that matters to anybody? Really? I mean, I think the individuals will care, but on the point I'm making generally, right? On the point of you believe there's a God and you don't have sufficient evidence to justify that belief, that alone is a bad thing. So by you going out and saying it, you are encouraging other people to believe things based on flimsy evidence, which we have agreed to earlier is bad. I don't want to cut off your belief system, but what I'm saying is, yes, there's a really good people who believe things that are not real. And I think believing things that you don't have good evidence for is a bad way to go about your life.
I absolutely do agree with you. Like believing things without evidence is it never leads to good things.
Without sufficient evidence. Let's add the word sufficient, because everybody was going to have some evidence, right? They're going to have an experience. A friend told them something. They're going to read an old book.
Right.
Okay.
I also like.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry. You go ahead. I have one other thing, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sure.
All you, Ibrahim. You've been great. I've been talking over you a little bit, but I just want to make sure we understand that I'm trying to abstract out. I'm sure you're a great person, but you're saying I'm with Islam, and that brings so much baggage. You are giving people cover, and I don't think you have sufficient evidence to even say that Islam is true. That's just my point. You asked what our beliefs were. We're answering you. Do you have any questions for us, or points you want to make?
No, I think that's it, and I appreciate you for being respectful.
Absolutely. Yeah. How about you, Forrest?
I wanted to ask one more really quick thing, which is that, at the beginning you were asking us, like, why don't you believe in this God and what's your argument against God? And we gave you a rundown of a bunch of stuff, and we picked apart a few things. But the one thing that I don't think we really hit on, or at least I didn't hear it, was that if God is running this world, that he's a monster for that reason. Something that Graham mentioned is that 10,000 children starve to death every single day. And that is only the children. When we're talking about all the people who starve to death every single day, we're closer to 25,000 people. And so every single day, over 1,000 people an hour, at least around half of them being children, die from just in a really painful and terrifying way from lack of food. So this is the world your God is running. Your God has the ability, supposedly God is the greatest, right? Has the ability to fix this. So why doesn't it? And what kind of God is this that lets this world run the way that it does?
Okay, so I do believe that God does not predestine or make things happen, and I believe that this is all based on human free will. This was human actions to let these children starve. I don't believe God had any part in it.
So God didn't know it was going to happen?
God did know it was going to happen, yeah.
Okay, so he chose to create a universe where he knew that this would happen. Could he have chosen to create a universe where it didn't happen?
He could have. He could.
Okay, so he chose for this to happen.
Made it happen. He absolutely, this is his fault. Yes, like that's the thing is, at the end of the day, if you're going to claim that this God is all powerful, all responsibility, all fault will inevitably fall back on this God, especially if you throw in all knowing as well. So if you're going to say this God could do absolutely anything and does know absolutely everything, it doesn't matter if I have free will or if everybody has free will or if nobody has free will or anything. God knows everything and God could change it and God chooses not to. So it is God's fault.
But I appreciate the honest answer. That is a very honest answer. I ask that question all the time, and I get a bunch of tap dancing, and you agreed. So I really respect you.
So someone in the chat just put a really succinct. They said, "My kids are gonna want to drink bleach." Well, kids are gonna do kid stuff. I can't mess with their free will, especially if you knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah, I knew they would drink it when I bought the bleach, but I bought it anyway.
You could have bought the bleach and put it in a different way, but you choose to make a place where you have the bleach and some colorful kitty cups and you wrote tasty magic juice on the bleach bottle. Like, that's the thing, man. And so, like, this God, at best, best case scenario for your God is that it isn't as powerful as it says it is, and it actually can't fix things. Right. But the more reasonable, like what it seems like from what you're telling us, is that this God is watching every bit of rape, murder, slavery, starvation, every bad thing that goes on in the world, and just folding his arms and saying, "Ah, fuck it, man. What are you going to do? That's not my problem, not my job, not my fault. I can conjure up a winged horse and I can split the moon in half, but fuck it. I'm just going to let this happen, and it's just not my problem."
I see your point there. So, because I believe that after prophethood is complete, humans can pretty much do whatever the hell they want on this earth. God's not going to intervene. So
that's fair, but it doesn't address what we brought up, which is God chose to create a situation in which this would happen. He could have created a world where it was physically impossible for people to rape children. He could have made it like the most disgusting thing. He could have created the laws of physics in a way in which it just physically wouldn't work. He didn't. I mean, and again, this is not why I don't believe. I don't believe because I don't have any evidence that's been presented to me that convinces me that this is true. It could be that your version is actually true, and you could present me with evidence, in which case we're back to Forrest's God, where we're like, okay, this guy's a monster. He's true, but he's a monster. But this is all stuff on top of the most important piece, which I want you to focus on, is the lack of sufficient evidence to convince anyone that it's true. I'm not convinced of your God for the same reason I'm not convinced of the Loch Ness Monster. Nobody has presented me with sufficient evidence to believe in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely does make sense. And yeah, I believe your opinion is valid because it's studied and informed.
I appreciate it. I think your opinion is valid because you are a decent human being and you are on the path to figuring everything out.
Of course, and yeah, I don't believe that you should be prosecuted for your beliefs or not believing in God. Like, even if someone left Islam, I don't believe there should be like a blasphemy or apostasy law. So, yeah, like, I do agree with you. So,
okay, that's great. Yeah. I would recommend, if you want a better, more informed conversation, we do have hosts occasionally who are ex-Islam converts. They're deconstructed from Islam, and they could probably even give you more specific information that might help you sort of figuring out what's going on with why we object to the claim that Islam is the one true religion.
Okay, yeah, okay, definitely, because I was not born into Islam, I converted, so I would definitely check it out.
Okay.
Sweet.
Well, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, Ibrahim. Have an awesome day.
Awesome call.
All right.